We all know that an important property of the odds ratio is that it is invariant to study design. Among other properties, this is one of the reasons why the use of the odds ratio is very popular in the epidemiological and generally in the applications literature. In this module, we take a step backwards and look at an overview of study design. We shall define the two basic kinds of study design used in analytical epidemiology, the cohort design and the case control design. We shall look briefly at their history, their properties, and problems with their construction. We shall make a distinction between case control and cohort designs and prospective and retrospective designs, and see that while a case control study is necessarily retrospective, a cohort study can be either prospective or retrospective. Learning objectives for this module. We shall mainly use this module to make a distinction between prospective and retrospective designs. To do so, we shall take a step backwards and look at a broad overview of the two types of study designs which are commonly used in epidemiologic literature. We shall first define cohort studies and in doing so make a distinction between prospective and retrospective cohorts. We shall also define another type of study design which is very popular in the epidemiologic literature and is called a case control study. This is the standard graphic which is used to make a distinction between prospective and retrospective studies. This is a graphic taken from the Wikipedia entry on the subject. So note that we have three sets of graphics, and in each of the graphics we observe black and white dots corresponding to exposure. We observe question marks corresponding to the occurrence of the disease, and we also observe a stick figure of the investigator. In each of the three designs, the relative positions of the outcome, the exposure, and the investigator are different, and this is what we shall explore in more detail in this module. We shall come back to this graphic after looking at an overview of the three underlying designs. So to begin with, the cohort study. Other than the clinical trial, the cohort study is also considered an almost gold standard for study design. The cohort study has a long history and it dates back to the classical study on the London cholera epidemic of 1849, which was conducted by John Snow. As you know, John Snow is regarded as the father of modern epidemiology, and he classified households by exposure to two water sources from two water companies. He observed that 37 and 315 cholera deaths per 10,000 households were observed for the two water sources, and thereby was among the first epidemiologists to try and quantify association between an exposure, in this case the source of drinking water, and the outcome, which was cholera. Prior to this, cholera was widely regarded as occurring due to a miasma, and there was no specific linkage to contamination of water. The prospective cohort design is a variant of the cohort design, which is also called a concurrent cohort. So this is how a prospective cohort design progresses. Cohorts are first assembled. They could be assembled based on exposure. So for example, if our exposure is smoking, we could have two cohorts corresponding to those who smoke and those who don't. That is, in case of a binary exposure, those who have the exposure and those who do not. Of course, it is not necessary for the exposure to be binary. It could be categorical or even continuous. And in each case, we can easily generalize the principle of the study design. So cohorts are first assembled, and a key assumption is that the members of the cohort have to be screened because we want to exclude those with a prior disease. So, for a cohort study, we only consider a cohort of members who are disease-free at the onset of the study. Additionally, at the baseline, we also collect information on the exposure as well as on confounders and perhaps also on other potential risk factors. Having collected information on the exposure and confounders, and having noted that the participants are free of disease, we then follow the cohort for a specified period to try and establish disease incidence in the various exposure groups. Note that a prospective cohort, by definition, progresses forward in time and hence the name prospective. However, we also have something called a retrospective cohort. A retrospective cohort is also called a non-concurrent or a historical cohort study. So how this differs from the prospective cohort is that cohorts are assembled not physically by the investigator, but based on available data records. If possible, then cases which are known to have the disease at the time the cohort is assembled, that is at study initiation, such cases are excluded. Exposure assessment, confounder information, all of this is collected at the baseline. However, note that all this depends on past data, and hence the investigator is completely dependent on the quality of the data for each of these requirements. Monitoring for the outcome is also done through an existing data system. These could, for example, be vital statistics, disease registries, employment records, insurance claims, and so on. And this is done at some point in the past. The differences between prospective and retrospective thus is that for prospective cohort, the investigator has more control over the cohort assembly and data quality, as each of this is the responsibility of the instructor and he has physical access to his cohort. For a retrospective study, the investigator does not have so much control because he has to rely solely on the quality of information in historical records. Note that while the prospective design information collection is designed and implemented for the purpose of scientific research by a team of investigators, in the case of a retrospective study design, the information is mainly collected for other purposes. So perhaps for routine administrative purposes and not for scientific research. We can thus expect a difference in the extent and the details as well as accuracy of the data sources for prospective and retrospective study designs. Having said so, note that retrospective cohorts are popular in occupational epidemiology. Occupational epidemiology refers to a situation where we look at the nature of prevalence or incidence of a disease which is related to an occupational exposure. Thus, we may be interested in looking at the prevalence of lung cancer among a cohort of mine workers, or for example, the prevalence of silicosis among glass workers. In this case, the exposure is related to the nature of their occupation. Such associations have certain features. For example, the exposure attributed to selected populations is based on individual employment data. So, for example, we could get information on exposure to silica for mine workers by looking at their total duration of employment, and we could get information on cancer incidence by looking at their corresponding medical insurance claims. The exposure is relatively rare in the general population. The disease has a long induction period, and it also has substantial health consequences. The analysis of cohort studies is fairly straightforward, and in the simplest case involves the 2x2 table. So here we have the simplest possible 2x2 table, assuming that exposure is binary and individuals can be classified as exposed or non-exposed based on their exposure. They can also be classified as diseased or non-diseased based on a binary classification of disease. So A, for example, is the number of subjects who were exposed and had the disease, and so on. We can then define the risk among those exposed as risk E hat equal to A by A plus B equal to A by NE, where NE is the number exposed, and risk of E bar hat equal to C by C plus D equal to C by N E bar. Having done so, there are a number of outcomes which we could define. So we could define I hat as the number of incident cases divided by the person time at risk. This is relevant if each individual is followed up for a different period of time. If all individuals are followed up for the same period of time, we can define the relative risk, which is denoted by RR hat and given by RR hat equal to risk E hat divided by risk of E bar hat equal to A by A plus B by C by C plus D. We can also define the incidence ratio in the case where the person years of follow-up is different for each individual, as IR hat equal to IE hat by IE bar hat equal to A by A plus B into TE by C plus D into TE bar, where TE and TE bar denote the total person years at risk for the two categories. Of course, in addition to this, we could also define the odds ratio, and in case we have multiple factors which are necessary to study, we could define the adjusted odds ratio by using, for example, logistic regression. Let us now consider the other type of analytical study design which is also popular in the literature. This is the case control study. So here we start out by taking separate samples of cases. By case we mean an individual who has the disease under consideration at study onset. So we take a sample of cases and a separate sample of controls. By control we mean a person who does not have the disease at study onset but is at risk to develop the disease during the study period. So we have these two groups. Next we collect information on confounders and other determinants of disease risk, and finally we calculate the incidence of we estimate the exposure histories in both groups and we compare them to see if there is a significant difference. The case control study also has a long history. So for example, one of the earliest mentions of the study is Guy's 1843 occupational health study of pulmonary consumption. For more details, you are referred to Lilienfeld and Lilienfeld, 1979. Doering in 1928 used the case control study to relate pipe smoking to oral cancer, and the publication in 1950 of 3 reports which followed up on the link between smoking and lung cancer generated an enormous interest as well as controversy about the causality of this relationship, and one of the well-known publications which you can know about this is due to Dole and Hill in 1950. The purpose of the case control study has been well summarized by Mantle and Hansel in their 1959 paper. So to quote Mantle and Hansel, a primary goal is to reach the same conclusions in a retrospective study as would have been obtained from a forward study if one had been done. Design issues for a case control study. So the first notable design issue is that instead of jumping on to designing a case control study, we should first have a good conceptualization of the underlying cohort study and behave as if we were sampling from this cohort study. A key issue with the case control study is definition of cases, and there are various sets of criterion such as the ICD-10 criterion which you can use for this purpose. You may of course need to define the case so as to exclude certain populations depending upon their clinical relevance to the disease. A far more important design issue is the definition of controls. To this end, note that we can have hospital-based controls. So for example, if our disease is cancer, we may choose to select our controls from some other ward at the same hospital. So say for example, the injury and the trauma ward is a popular choice. We could also have community-based controls where we sample not from the hospital but go to the general population. So this is perhaps more generalizable but of course logistically more difficult. We could have special controls consisting of family members of those who are hospitalized or neighbors or twins or so on. None of the methods for selection of controls is completely free from bias, and for more details on this you are referred to the paper on biostatistics in the section on epidemiology. Selection bias is a common feature which case control studies are typically susceptible to. So by selection bias, we are referring to the underlying cohort study and selection bias occurs when selection from this underlying cohort is not random. So this could occur, for example, in physicians refuse consent, if the subject refuses to participate, if subjects are ascertained through their households. So say, for example, we are looking at a study of the association between physical activity and the occurrence of coronary heart disease, and households are sampled during weekdays. This means that we would typically not be able to find the working population, and thus we do not have a representative sample from the underlying cohort study. Finally, if we conduct random digit dialing, then we are obviously excluding households which do not have telephones and giving more preference to households with multiple telephones. In each case, there is some bias in selecting from the underlying cohort. In going to the methods for analysis, our motivation here was to establish the invariance of the odds ratio. So you can see that the invariance of the odds ratio follows from the fact that the odds ratio as defined for a cohort study, where we sample given X, where X is exposure, and the odds ratio from a case control study, where we sample given D, where D is disease, are necessarily same, and this can easily be shown by an application of Bayes' theorem. There are other methods for the analysis of disease. Some popular methods are due to Mantle and Hansel, who construct a test and estimator under stratification, the proportional hazards regression model for life table data due to Cox, and many variants of the disease, the nested case control study being one. Other variants, such as the case cohort study, also exist in the literature. So finally, let us revisit this graphic. To begin with, we have the case control study. Here we have a diseased and a non-diseased cohort, and we go back in time to ascertain their exposures. This is the case control study, and it is by definition retrospective. We next have the prospective study. So the investigator has assembled the two cohorts based on exposure and goes forward in time to ascertain their disease. We also have the retrospective study cohort, where the individual assembles the cohort as before based on their exposure and follows them forward in time to ascertain their disease. However, the key distinction is that at the time of where the investigator starts his study, the disease has already occurred. In this module, we have seen an overview of study design. We have defined the two basic study designs used in analytical epidemiology, the case control design and the cohort design. We have looked at the history of the two designs. The cohort design, for example, dates back to the applications of John Snow and his efforts to associate a causal relationship with water intake and cholera. The case control study too has a long history, but it is susceptible to certain flaws or scientific biases. However, it is now widely accepted as a very popular study design used in infectious disease epidemiology. We have looked at the history, the construction, some properties and methods of analysis for the two studies. The main distinction which we have made is between prospective and retrospective studies. For more details on these and other study designs, you are referred to the paper on biostatistics and the section on epidemiology.